Good to see all of you. If you need a Bible, please raise your hand and we will get one to you. Once you've got a Bible in your possession, you can open up to 1 Samuel chapter 21. 1 Samuel chapter 21. And we are continuing the saga of Samuel, and really the focus of the book of Samuel at this point has changed to, it's gone from Samuel in the early chapters to then it was Saul, and now it is the transitional time between Saul and David. And Saul is really losing his marbles, and God has taken away his spirit and sent him an evil spirit to chastise him, and he's working on getting Saul out of the way, but also preparing David to take over as king. And so that's what we're seeing. And David is this is going to sound so basic, but David's a person. I say that because we hear some of these stories about David, and we may tend to think, oh man, this guy's on another level. And maybe in some cases he is on another level. Maybe his commitment to the Lord. But what we are going to see today is going to remind us that he is very much a man. He is very much a human being. In other words, he's very much imperfect. And so let me just bring you up to speed real quickly before we get into this. What is going on at this point is that David is running from Saul. Saul is the king, and God is moving Saul out of the way, and he's going to make David the king. But Saul right now is chasing after David and wanting to kill him, to eliminate him. It would seem to us over the last couple of previous chapters, that people are figuring out. It's not been stated plainly, but people are beginning to find out that David is going to be the next king. And it would seem to us that Saul is figuring that out also. And so he's chasing down David. He hates him. It's clear. And he wants to eliminate David in order to protect his own position, the prominence that comes with that, the status and everything that comes along with that. And so Saul is losing his mind and chasing after David. Now, the question is, why is David running from Saul? Why doesn't he just fight him? Why doesn't he just go eliminate him? I mean, he fought Goliath, killed Goliath. He can't kill Saul. He certainly can. Here's the challenge. The challenge is that David is married to Saul's daughter, and he's best friends with one of Saul's sons. So, on top of that, he loves Saul. He knows that he's the king at that moment, and he doesn't want to attack the king. He loves the family and has no desire to fight against Saul, and so he's running for his life. But as we're going to see here, even David struggled with fear. Now you'll notice that I titled this chapter, David the Desperate. That desperation is going to lead him into sin. So let's see what we have here. Verse 1, it says, Now David came to Nob, and to Ahimelech the priest. And Ahimelech was afraid, I'll tell you why in just a moment, when he met David and said to him, Why are you alone? And no one is with you. Now, David comes to Ahimelech the priest. That's a good place to go. When you're in trouble and fearful, to go to a spiritual leader and say, hey, I need some help. What should I do here? Give me some counsel. That's a good thing to do. However, that's not what David does when he gets to see this priest, this spiritual leader. What happens first is the priest asks him two questions here, okay? Now, this section here, there's only two main divisions. The first one is before Ahimelech, and then in a few minutes I'll put the second main division up, which will be before Achish. So we'll get to that in a little bit, but What do I mean by before Ahimelech? This is David standing before Ahimelech. He's having a conversation. He's come to Ahimelech, the priest, and Ahimelech, upon seeing him, has two questions for him immediately. Now, those two questions are motivated by fear. It tells us right there in verse 1 that when Ahimelech saw him, that he was afraid. Why was he afraid? Well, it says here, he asked him two questions. Why are you alone and no one is with you? Those really are the same two questions, right? Same question. Why are you alone and why is no one with you? I mean, same thing. But the priest is fearful. Now, why is he fearful? Now, we're not told specifically why he's afraid to see David. But we can safely gather, or we can just safely take a really good, safe guess as to why he's fearful to see David. Well, first of all, he knows that David is married to Saul's daughter. He knows that he's best friends with Saul's son, Jonathan. He knows that David is a servant of Saul, that he's one of the captains in his military. So this is a well-known individual. Everybody knows David. Everybody knows that he killed Goliath. He's got fame. He's got a song. They're going to repeat the song in this chapter. But everybody knows that, including this priest, Ahimelech. And so when he sees David come up by himself, he is fearful immediately. Something is not right. Now, whether he's wondering, okay, David, why are you here? Are you here to kill me? Or that we're not told. But something is amiss. Something's not right. And so he asks, why are you alone and no one is with you? Now, at verse 2, we get the first of our two subpoints in this section, and that is, here's what he does. As he stands before Ahimelech, he lies to get the showbread. What is the showbread? I'll explain to you in just a moment. It'll actually tell us in a moment, but I'll explain what showbread is as we go through it. But here's verse 2. So David said, he answers Ahimelech the priest. Here's what he does. He says, the king has ordered me on some business. Is that true? No, that's a lie. And said to me, so the lie is developing. He tells a lie, now the lie is developing. And said to me, do not let anyone know anything about the business on which I send you or what I have commanded you. That's a lie. The king didn't send him on official business. The king didn't say any of this to him. And then it says this in verse 2. Here's what David says, and I have directed my young men to such and such a place. So David tells the priest, well, listen, I'm on a special mission from Saul, and he's told me to keep it a secret. It's special business, special assignment. And the young guys that I have traveling with me, I've already sent them off to a secret location. So all of that is a lie. But it began with verse 2, the king has ordered me on some business. That's a lie. The truth is that the king wants to kill David. He hasn't sent him off on some special mission. And as far as we know, there are no young men with him. As far as we know, he fled by himself. We will find him in the next chapter. He goes to a cave, and we're told that he's in the cave alone. So there are no young men with him. So what happens immediately is that David, first thing out of his mouth is to lie, and then that lie begins to develop. And it's a strange thing about lies, isn't it? That lies oftentimes grow. They may start small, they may start big, but they rarely stay that same size. Seems like they always begin to grow. Let's find out what happens. He tells this lie, and he continues in verse 3. Now therefore, he tells the priest, what have you on hand? What do you have here? Give me 5 loaves of bread in my hand, or whatever can be found. Now, do you hear there in verse 3 the desperation in David? What do you have here? Give me 5 loaves of bread, or whatever you've got. Thus the reason why I titled it David the Desperate. He's desperate and he's asking for anything. I'll take anything, he says. Now, verse 4 says, "And the priest answered and said, there is no common bread on hand." I don't have any just regular bread to give you, David. He says, "But there is holy bread." Now, that's a reference to what I called the showbread. I'll tell you why it's called showbread in just a moment. It's actually in the passage here as we continue reading on. But initially, he calls it holy bread. He says, there's no regular bread that I can give you. He says, I only have holy bread. He said, this is what the priest says. "If the young men have at least kept themselves from women." So they haven't been having any relations with women recently, right? As long as they've been keeping themselves ceremonially clean or pure, then they can have some of this holy bread. Now, there's a lot of things going on here. Let me explain to you. This holy bread that's being offered right now is bread that was meant for the priests. Okay? This is, again, it's called showbread or holy bread. And the bread was special bread that was put inside of the tabernacle. It was part of the worship that the worship system that they had. And so this bread would stay in there, and then they would change it out. And when they changed it out, they would put fresh bread in there, and then the priests could eat the bread that they were replacing. They could take, we might call it old bread, day old bread, whatever, but they could eat that bread. That was part of the worship system, or the religious, the sacrificial system. So when he says here in verse 4, listen, I don't have any regular bread, all I have is holy bread, that's the bread he's talking about. Now, he also goes on to say this, if the young men, so what he's saying is, I can give you the holy bread if the young men that are with you have at least kept themselves pure. Now, there's a couple different things going on. This is a sad situation, and let me tell you why. And that is because David, up to this point, has been a trustworthy individual. How do we know that? Because when he tells the priest, when he feeds him the lie, "Oh, I'm on a special mission, and I've got some guys, and they're really hungry. I don't have anything." The priest immediately believes him. He doesn't have any reason to doubt him. Now, this is good in a sense that David is trustworthy. What's bad about it is that after this, David can no longer be considered to be trustworthy. Now, he can gain that trust back, but it's hard to gain trust back, isn't it? Once you've lost it, it's hard to just get it back. It can be earned back. And he can get it back, and he will get it back. But in this moment, this is sad that David, we're going to find out that he's filled with fear. Because he's filled with fear, motivated by fear, he's willing to trade his trustworthiness. See that? That's not a good trade. It would have been better for David to just tell the truth. We'll talk about that as we go through. But the bad part is that the priest just immediately believes his lie. That's not a bad thing for the priest. He knows David. He knows he's a trustworthy guy, so he just believes him. It's not the wrong decision for the priest. He doesn't know that David's lying, obviously. But David is trading in his trustworthiness. Not a good trade. Not a good trade. It would have been much better for him to just tell the truth from the very beginning, to say, "Hey, Saul's trying to kill me, and I'm hungry. I'll eat anything. What do you got?" Now, by doing that, it is true that he would have been taking a chance. He doesn't know if maybe Ahimelech, if he tells the truth, it may be that Ahimelech is going to go tell the king. He's going to send a message to the king. "Hey, I heard that you're looking for David. David's here, and Nob, send your assassins. Let's get rid of this guy." That's the chance that David is taking. And so David finds it more convenient for him to lie, but we're going to find out that it is, in fact, motivated by fear. But he believes the priest believes him. Here's something else. I love that the priest is willing to give up what should be only for himself. He's a priest, there are other priests there, and this bread was meant for the priests. But the priest, by his estimation, is thinking, This bread is holy. It's not supposed to be just given to anybody, but I see a man here who's desperate. This is a servant of the king, is a servant of God, and that took priority. The priest is thinking, you know what? I don't think God's going to be mad if I use this bread and give it to this hungry guy with these hungry guys that he supposedly is with. So I love the priest's answer. You know what? I'm willing to forego. I mean, this is bread that he can partake of. And yet he's willing to say, you know what? I'll give it to you, David. If the guys that are with you, they've remained pure, right? I can't just give this bread away to anybody. And David is going to assure him that no, everything's fine. And so in verse 5, it says, then David answered the priest and said to him, truly, women have been kept from us about 3 days since I came out. So I've been out for 3 days. And the vessels of the young men are holy. He's probably referring to their bodies. Their vessels, their bodies are holy. They haven't used them for unholy purposes. And the bread is in effect common. That's David saying, I mean, the bread is not, it's pretty much just common bread now because you've already replaced it. So, David's kind of, what's the big deal? And then he goes on to say this in verse 5. The bread is in effect common, even though it was consecrated in the vessel this day. So he's saying, you can let the bread go. What's the big deal? You've already replaced it. It's pretty much like common bread now. But you will notice with me what's happening, and that is that David started with a lie, and immediately that lie began to grow. That's what lies do. They begin to grow. And now David is continuing, and he's drawing this priest in and saying, you know what, it's not a big deal, give me the bread. It's pretty much common bread anyways, you've already replaced it, all these things. So in verse 6, the priest gave him holy bread. For there was no bread there, but the show bread. That's the holy bread. What does show bread mean? This is interesting. Show bread, the word means bread of faces. What does that mean? Is that bread with faces in it? Is that bread that's made from faces? What is that? No. What it means or what it indicates is that it's face-to-face bread. What is he talking about? He's talking about this bread. What is the purpose of this bread? The purpose of the bread is to be put in the tabernacle, the center or place of worship. And the idea is that this is bread. When the priests eat it, it is as if, or what they are doing is they are having a meal with God. They're in that tabernacle, that holy tabernacle, that place of worship, and they're having a meal with God. That's what makes it special. It's a funny thing, isn't it, when you've gone to the movies with one of your friends or a group of friends, or you go to the Friday night football game or whatever, where you've been hanging out, and you're leaving, and you go, hey, let's go get something to eat. And, okay, what's open? And you look for the normal things, whatever. But have you ever gone to, a restaurant or whatever, and you ate, and you're just like, oh, man, this is like the best burger I've ever had in my life. They got the best fries. And so you go home, and, you tell your family, oh, yeah, we went to the game, or we went to the movies, or we were at the mall, or whatever. And, yeah, and then we stopped and got burgers at this place. I'd never been there before. Man, it was so good. And then later on, your family goes, hey, let's go by that burger place that you went to. And you go, yeah, that's great, man. Their food was so good. You go in there and you eat the burger. And then you're like, you know what? This burger it's not as good as it was that night. And the fries, I don't know. They're just mid. They're kind of soggy. I don't know. I'm not really feeling it this time. What happened? What changed? What happened was, here's what happens, is that when we're eating a meal with somebody and having a good time and we're with all our friends and, we're all free and, this is so much good. You know what? We don't really notice. Everything, the food tastes better, the soda tastes better. Oh, man, it's the greatest food in the world. You didn't really realize that, it's just okay. You didn't realize that. You go back with your family, you're like, it's just okay. You're having such a good time with your friends. But what was special about it is that it was the company, it was the friends that you were with. made that moment special. The idea with this bread is, it's not so much the bread, well, what did it taste like? Or was it heavenly bread? Or, what it was the fact that they were eating the bread with God. It was communion. It was sharing a meal. That's a special thing. We love to eat, don't we? And when you sit down, you hang out with a friend, you eat together, there's something special. There's a bond there. The bond tightens. It gets a little bit stronger. So that's the idea with this bread, this showbread, is that it's face-to-face bread. It is associated with and to be eaten before the face of God. That's the idea with this bread. And so this priest is willing to give this away. What is rightfully his, he's willing to sacrifice it and give it away to David. Why is he willing to do that? Because he immediately trusted David. He believed David's lie. Shame on David. Shame on David for lying to the priest, lying to anybody. He shouldn't have lied. Now, it goes on in verse 7. Look at this in verse 7. This is a parenthesis. Verse 7 is a parenthesis. Now, a certain man of the servants of Saul was there that day, detained before the Lord. We don't know what that means. He just was, for some reason, he was kept there at that place before the Lord. And it says, and his name was Doeg, an Edomite. I mean, he sounds like a bad guy already, right? Doeg, the Edomite, the chief of the herdsmen who belonged to Saul. Now, what is going on with that? Well, there's a servant of Saul there. I wonder, is he going to run and tell Saul, I saw David. He was at Nob. He was with Ahimelech. Ahimelech gave him some bread. We don't know, right? But just store that in your brain, and we'll get to it at a later time. Not in this chapter. We'll get back to that at a later time. So David lies to get the showbread. The next thing that he does in verses 8 and 9 is that he lies to get the sword. Let's read it. Verse 8, and David said to Ahimelech, is there not here on hand a spear or a sword? For I have brought neither my sword nor my weapons with me. That's strange. He's a captain of the army. He's on a special mission from the king, and he left without food and without weapons. And David goes, it says in verse 8, because the king's business required haste. Did you see what happened? That lie that he started with, it just grew a little bit more. I mean, we're like a minute into this, and the lie has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger already. It's grown a few times already. That's what happens to lies. That's what happens to lies. Is that when I lie, I then have to grow that lie a little bit more the next time I tell it to somebody in order to cover my bases. Because I might tell a lie, and then someone will ask a question. And I go, oh, well, the first one was a lie, and I didn't anticipate that question, so I got to come up with something quick. And this is sad. This is sad. It's sad that David, that he lied so quickly, so easily. You know, it's a bad thing. It's a bad characteristic or trait to be able to, or to be a good liar. That's not a good thing. Some people are bad liars. That's a good thing. I've encountered people who have lied and they're just bad at it. And I'll tell them, you know what? You're a bad liar, and that's good. You don't want to be a good liar. When you're a good liar, it just comes easily. It comes fast, man. Just boom, it just rolls right off the tongue. And you go, man, I told this lie and I'm getting myself out of trouble. And you begin to fool yourself. We'll talk some more about that. But here's what he does. He says, hey, I don't have any weapons. What do you got here? Verse 9. So the priest, again, desperate, David the desperate, right? I got no food. I got no weapons. Verse 9. So the priest said, the sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you killed in the valley of Elah, there it is, wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. It's back there behind the priestly vest, tucked back there. He says, the priest says to him, if you will take that, take it. For there's no other sword except that one here. And David said, there is none like it. I'll take it. Give it to me. That's great. I'll take the sword. This is the sword that he used to kill Goliath. This is the sword that he used. It's Goliath's sword. After he killed him, he took the sword and he chopped off Goliath's head, and then he grabbed Goliath's head. He took the sword and he walked off with both of them. And he says, great, I'll take it. So he lies. What's happening? Again, the lie is growing. He lied to get the showbread. Now he lies to get the sword. Now, his lying doesn't stop there. Let's move on to our second main division. I told you it would be before Achish. Before Achish. Verses 10 to 15. So it says in verse 10, then David arose and fled that day from before Saul and went to Achish, the king of Gath. Now, we'll stop there for a moment. Pump the brakes. Achish, the king of Gath. Now, David, help me out, family. David just left Ahimelech. He's got bread. What else did he take? The sword. And the sword originally belonged to Goliath. And does anybody know where Goliath was from? He was a Philistine. That is correct. That's correct. Gath. Good job. Goliath of Gath. You go back and read about Goliath the first time we hear about Goliath of Gath, the champion of the Philistines. He was a Philistine, but he was from Gath specifically. Okay? Now, back up for just a moment in your brain. What did we just read? We just read that David took Goliath's sword. So he's got Goliath's sword. Goliath was originally, he was a Philistine, and he was originally from Gath. He's got Goliath's sword, who was a champion of the Philistines. He killed Goliath. Goliath was from Gath. And he just went to see Achish. And Achish is where? Gath. Achish is in Gath. He's a Philistine, but he's from the city of Gath. And David just went there. Why did he go to Gath? Well, we're going to find out as we continue reading that he went to Gath. Again, David the desperate. He's so desperate. He's so desperate that he's not thinking clearly. So desperate that he goes to the Philistines, the enemies of God, and he goes specific. And then of all places, he decides to go to Gath, where they had a champion a while back named Goliath. David killed him. He shows up at Goliath's city looking for help. Why would he do that? He did that because he was motivated by fear. It was fear that led him to very quickly and easily lie to the priest. And then it was his own fear for his own life that caused that lie to grow, because he's growing it. The lie is getting bigger. And it is fear for his own life that's driving him to the enemies to Gath. What is this guy thinking? That's the problem. He's not thinking clearly. Why is he not thinking clearly? Here is why. What all of this indicates, the line, the going to Achish, what it indicates for us is that David, he's a champion of Israel. He killed Goliath. Everybody knows about him. They wrote a song about him, which we'll get in this chapter. We'll hear it in just a moment. They wrote a song about him. Everybody loves David. But what he's doing right now, keep in mind, when he faced Goliath, there was not one mention of fear on David's part. He went down with boldness, courage. He was filled with faith. He goes down and he meets Goliath. There was never any doubt. Now, a few chapters later, the only thing he's doing is doubting. What he's doing in this chapter, what's being revealed to us, is that David is no longer trusting the Lord. He's trusting himself. He's trusting his own resources. Now, here's what it looks like. David could have trusted the Lord and told the truth and said, hey, listen, I'm running from Saul. I'm running for my life, and this is the truth. I'm hungry, and if you want to turn me in, but I need some help. Instead, what he does is he comes up with a lie, and he seems to be pretty good at it, which is bad. But then that lie begins to develop, it begins to grow. He's trusting himself. Why is he trusting himself? He's trusting himself because he is afraid. He's stopped trusting God, and now the fear has crept in, and the fear turned into lying. It's motivating him to lie. And not only that, but the fear and the trusting of himself and no longer trusting God has got him going to the enemy. But you see, that's what happens when you and I stop trusting God. Then we're susceptible to all of these other things. If I'm not trusting God, now I've got to trust myself. Well, I might look at somebody or the situation and go, you know what? I cannot beat that person. There's no way I'm going to win. Let me just lie and get myself out of it. It causes me to, my thinking to be cloudy. Now, it is true that if David had told the truth, it may have been that Ahimelech would have said, you know what? You stay right here. I'm calling Saul. Better call Saul. It's true. That might have happened. It may have happened. But let me tell you what happens when we tell the truth in a difficult situation. This is not David's fault that he's in this position. Now, it's his fault that he's making the position worse. But let me tell you what happens. When we're faced with some difficulty, some challenge, and we go, you know what? I can tell the truth, but it might get bad, or I could just lie and get myself out of this. If I tell a lie, then I've got to tell another lie to cover the first lie. And I've got to remember. Now, I realize when I talk about lying, you guys probably don't even know what I'm talking about. Because who in here lies, right? You don't lie. Your pastor has lied plenty of times in his life. So I'll tell you what it's like since you don't understand. Sometimes you tell a lie, and then in order to cover that lie, you got to tell another lie. If you've told a lie to your mom about why you got home so late, and it was a lie, then you run into dad, and dad asks you, now all of a sudden, you're desperately trying to remember, what did I tell mom? I got to make sure I got my story straight. Then you got to cover, when they start asking questions, you go, oh man, I didn't anticipate that. Well, here's what happened, and this is why, and the story gets bigger. Now, if I just decide from the very beginning, you know what, I'm just going to tell the truth. The truth is, I may get in trouble, right? Especially if I'm talking with mom or dad, and you know what, here's the thing. Here's what happened. I'm just going to tell you the truth. Now, let me tell you what that does. It does a couple of things. Number one, I don't have to try to remember the story. Because this is the true story. That's all I got. That's all I've got. Please forgive me. This is what happened. This is what I did. It was dumb. I shouldn't have done that. The story doesn't have to grow. It's just, this is what happened. But by telling the truth, here's what I'm doing. By telling the truth, I am aligning myself with what God's word says. I'm telling the truth. Right? God's word teaches us to be honest. It tells us do not bear false witness. That's a fancy way of saying don't lie. So when I tell the truth, what happens is I'm aligning myself with what God, this is the truth of God's word. God wants me to be honest. I'm being honest. You go, okay, so what? By doing that, what I'm then doing is I'm placing myself into God's care. I'm saying, God, I'm doing what your word tells me to do. I'm telling the truth. So now, God, I'm depending on you. I've been obedient to you. Now I'm counting on you. You work out your plan. See, now I'm no longer having to work out my own plan and trying to get myself out of this mess. I'm throwing myself in God's mercy and saying, you know what, God, I did what you told me to do. I told the truth. This is your problem now, God. That's what I'm doing. That's the best thing that I can do. Even if I'm facing a possible, I might get grounded, or I might, lose out on these privileges, or I might get in trouble, the best thing that I could do is, let me just be honest from the very beginning. It's going to save you so much trouble. As opposed to lying, then that lie begins to grow. Then you got to remember the lie. And what did I tell him last week? I can't remember. And now you're trying to, cover up the lie that you first told. So now you're telling more lies. There's the stress that goes along with that. Listen, not to mention this. Let me say this. Lying is lying. What do I mean by that? Just because David is a godly individual doesn't mean that the lying is okay. Just because you're a sweet angel, you're a nice guy, and you're a godly individual, and your parents, you're your parents' favorite or whatever, and just because because of that doesn't make lying okay. Lying is still, even though David is doing it and he's a godly individual, just because he's doing it doesn't make it okay. It's still a violation of God's word. It's still a sin. It's still a sin. There isn't anything that makes it right. It's still a lie. So, he shows up to the king of Gath, and in verse 11 it says, and the servants of Achish said to him. Now, when he gets to Achish, or to Gath, he's not just going to immediately see the king. He's going to meet the servants first. So here's what the servants do. Verse 10. And the servants of Achish said to him, said to King Achish, this is what they said. Is this not David, the king of the land? Now that's odd, because David's not the king yet. He's been anointed king, but he hasn't assumed the role of king yet. But people are figuring out that David's the next king. I don't know what Achish or what the Philistines have heard at this point, but they're already referring to him as the king of the land. They said, is this not David, the king of the land? And look what they say in verse 11. Did they not sing of him to one another in dances, saying, Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000s? Isn't this the guy that's king over Israel? Isn't this the guy that they write songs about? What they're essentially saying to Achish, their king, is, this is David. This guy's dangerous. We should not have him here. Now, verse 12 says this. Now, David took these words to heart and was very much afraid of Achish, the king of Gath. Here's our subpoint. He was fearful. Again, I told you at the beginning, he was motivated by fear. And it's said plainly for us here. This is one of the strangest statements in the entire chapter. One of the strangest statements in the book of 1 Samuel up to this point. It says that he was very much afraid of Achish, the king of Gath. Now we may go, well, yeah, for obvious reasons, the king could have him killed right there on the spot. And you're right, he could. But how could David, as a young man, face another man from Gath, a giant from Gath, with absolutely no fear whatsoever, full confidence in the Lord, go down with one stone in a sling, swing it, kill Goliath of Gath, take out his own sword, Goliath's own sword, cut his head off as a young guy? How could he do that and yet be very much afraid of the king of Gath? Now, Achish. Achish was not a giant. Goliath was. Achish was not. What happened? What happened is that David is a guy, he's a man, he's a person. And he, like us, is a great reminder that he's not perfect. And it's a great reminder that even David at times had that roller coaster faith. You know what that is, right? Sometimes you're way up. And you go, man, you know what? I trust the Lord. I don't care what it is. I'm trusting the Lord. It may be that, hey, we just got back from camp. I'm pumped up, man. We had Bible studies. We had worship, man. We had fellowship. It was a great time. I'm ready. Let's go. I'm ready to just attack the world. And you feel like, man, I'm up at the top of the roller coaster. Here we go. And then something can happen that would cause us to stop trusting God, to start trusting ourselves, and there goes that roller coaster, man. I mean, it's fun at Magic Mountain. It's not so much fun in your faith. We don't want roller coaster faith. What we want is a faith that is steady. It's always strong. It's not up and down. But the fact is that we oftentimes have a roller coaster faith. It's up and it's down and it's up and it's down. As we mature, we spend more time up than we do down, but we still have those down times. And David is definitely experiencing one of those times right now. But it really is his own fault. So they say, listen, Achish, we shouldn't have this guy here. David in verse 12 is very much afraid of the king of Achish, the king of Gath. So here's what happens in verses 13 to 15. He fakes it. Now, I put faking because I like alliterations, and we got fearful with an F and faking with an F. But here's the truth. What is faking? Faking is lying. Now, I may be faking it with a friend and joking around. It's still lying. It's just fun lying. It's harmless lying where we go, oh, you know what, I was just kidding, and everybody is, okay, you're not a big deal. But it's still lying, to be honest. David is not joking around here. He's lying. Here's what he does. Check this out in verse 13. So he changed his behavior before them. I mean, just they've got him, and he hears what they said. He becomes fearful, and he immediately changes his behavior. That's what happens. So another one of the effects is that when I'm motivated by fear and I'm trying to protect myself and take care of myself, what can oftentimes happen is that when I get around the enemy, I change who I am. I don't need to change who I am. What I want to do is be in love with the Lord, committed to the Lord, regardless of who I'm with. Whether I'm with God's people or with God's enemies. Same person. But what happens is so very common. David changes who he is. And we're told there in verse 13, so he changed his behavior before them. I don't want to do that. I don't want to get caught up in that. I don't want to get caught up in lies and then changing my behavior. What I want to do is just stay consistent with the Lord and consistent with people. I don't want to change who I am. I belong to the Lord. That's it. But the truth is that oftentimes I get myself into situations where I have to change who I am. David changes who he is, his behavior. And look what he did. He pretended madness. In other words, he was faking it. Man, not only was this guy a warrior, not only was he a worshiper, a psalter, or a psalmist, or he wrote psalms, it seems to us that he's also a great actor. Verse 13, he pretended madness in their hands. So all of a sudden he just changed and started acting crazy, scratched on the doors of the gate, and let his saliva fall down on his beard. Ew. Right? If you got a dad who has a beard, and there's been lots of times in my life where I had a beard, and sometimes you're eating your burger or your pizza or whatever, and then afterwards you got a little extra left in there, for later on. It's gross, He begins to let his spit drool. He's drooling all over his beard. Just a quick note, he's got a beard now. He's no longer a little boy. He's a man now. He's grown, but he's acting like a little boy. He's letting the saliva. He's acting crazy. Then Achish said to his servants, look, you see this man is insane. Why have you brought him to me? Have I need of madmen that you have brought this fellow to play the madman in my presence? Shall this fellow come into my... You're going to let this guy into my house? Get him out of here. That's what happens. Why did David act crazy? Because David was afraid for his life. And what does he do? Again, he falls back on what worked the first time. That's another problem with lying, is that if I tell a lie and it works the first time, then it's a good chance that I'm going to do it again. Because, it worked the first time, let me do it again. I then build a habit. I begin to make a habit out of being disobedient to God because, it worked the first time. So, because it worked the first time with the priest, Ahimelech, he goes, man, it'll work again with Achish. And he does it. Now, here's what happens. It actually works. He lies to the Philistines, the people of Gath, Achish and his servants. He lies in order to save his own life and get out of trouble, and it worked. And that's one of the problems with lying, is that sometimes it works. And sometimes I don't get caught immediately. And what happens is when it works, then what I'm doing is I'm fooling myself. I think I'm fooling everybody, and maybe I am fooling people, but eventually they are going to find out. It works the first time, and I go, you know what? I'm going to do it again. Man, that was so effective the first time. And we begin to develop this habit of lying. We get better at it, which is a bad thing. And you go, okay, but he got out of trouble. Yes, he did. That is true, at least for now. And we're not told of any lasting effects, but we'll find out. We'll find out later on. But let me tell you what else he did. Not only has he violated God's law, he's not supposed to be lying. Not only has he forfeited his trustworthiness to the people that he lied to. But let me tell you the worst part of all of this. The worst part of all of this is that he forfeited the privilege, the opportunity of watching God work. You see, because I most often lie when I find myself in some impossible position where I go, you know what, I can't tell the truth because if I do that, I'm going to be busted, disgusted, can't be trusted. I go, man, I got to lie. And when I lie, I'm then taking the opportunity away from God to work on my behalf, to save me. I take that opportunity away from him and I go, you know what? I'm going to save myself. And in so doing, I lose the opportunity to watch God do something miraculous, something wonderful, to do something, to put his power on display. Because I lied instead of trusting him. And maybe I'm facing an impossible position, and you know what? Let me just go ahead and tell the truth. What I'm then doing is putting that problem into God's hands. I'm putting myself into God's hands, and I'm saying, God, maybe I did mess up, but I'm telling the truth, and so I'm being obedient to you. God, now it's your problem. And then God can figure it out and work and put his power on display. But when I lie, I'm taking that away from God and I'm trying to fix it myself. And a person may succeed miserably. I may succeed at lying and get myself out of that problem, that trouble. But it wasn't beneficial at all because I forfeited the opportunity to watch God work. I don't want to do that. I don't want to miss out on an opportunity to let God work. So let me just go on and tell the truth. And if I'm taking the chance of possibly getting in trouble, well, you know what? I'm leaving that to God. But if I tell the truth, I'm right with God. If I tell the truth, I don't have to try and come up with a bigger lie to cover the first lie and go on. I don't have to do any of that. I'm just trusting him. I'm just going to trust him. Now, we've made our way into a section of 1 Samuel where we begin to see psalms that correspond with what we're learning. Now that first happened, it may have happened earlier in Psalms, but what we know for sure is that, for instance, for example, in 1 Samuel 19, David wrote Psalm 59 during that time. And so if you're a note taker and you go, you know what, I want to check that out and see what it says. Psalm 59 was written for his experience of 1 Samuel 19. 1 Samuel 19 is when he was running from Saul. And it's specifically when David went home and Saul said, hey, I want guards outside of his house, assassins. When he comes out in the morning, kill him. And that's when his wife, Michal, said, hey, you got to get out of here tonight. And she snuck him out the bedroom window, and then she set up a statue or basically a fake David in the bed. So when they came in and they went to look for David, they go, hey, he's not in here. You remember that story? Well, David wrote a psalm about that. We didn't have time to go and look at it then when we were in 1 Samuel 19. But for this chapter, for 1 Samuel 21, there are actually 2 psalms written. One of them is Psalm 56. Wonderful psalm. We're not going to read that. But another one of them is one of my favorite psalms, Psalm 34. So from this experience, David pens Psalm 34. Let me read some of Psalm 34 to you. Psalm 34 says this, a psalm of David when he pretended madness before Abimelech. Now you go, Abimelech? I thought the guy's name was Achish. Well, it is believed that Abimelech by this time had become a title for the king. But here's what it says. A psalm of David when he pretended madness before Abimelech, who drove him away, and he departed. So he kicked him out. Get out of here. I don't need the crazy guys in here. Get out of here. David says this, I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. My soul shall make its boast in the Lord. The humble shall hear of it and be glad. O magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt his name together. I sought the Lord, and he heard me and delivered me from all my fears. Now it goes on. It's a wonderful psalm. But that can be kind of confusing, because that doesn't sound like the same David that we just saw in 1 Samuel 21. The David that we saw in 1 Samuel 21 was fearful. He was trying to protect himself. He was lying. He wasn't trusting God. He wasn't blessing the Lord at all times. He wasn't praising him continually in his mouth. He wasn't boasting in the Lord. So what are we talking about here? Well, let me read verse 4 for you again. Psalm 34:4. I sought the Lord, and he heard me and delivered me from all my fears. So 1 Samuel 21, David lives through that. Afterward, at some point, I don't know how soon after, but he pens a psalm about his experience in 1 Samuel 21. And what becomes clear to us in reading Psalm 34, which is the corresponding psalm, is that David had learned his lesson afterwards. Yes, he had lied. He had feared for his own life. He was trying to protect himself. All of these things were wrong. He wasn't trusting God. But after the fact, he learns his lesson again. And he says in verse 4, he says, oh man, I sought the Lord and he heard me and delivered me from all my fears. I had all of these fears. Now, if I'm fearful, then I'm not trusting God. I can't do both at the same time. I can't trust God and be afraid. It's one or the other. So David is admitting in verse 4 of Psalm 34, he's saying, you know what? I was afraid during that time, but God delivered me. God saved me. He says, I sought the Lord. I called out to the Lord. Eventually, I called out to the Lord, and the Lord was faithful. Because even through our disobedience, our lying, our violating of God's word, God doesn't give up on us. He doesn't just go, you know what, you blew it. Get out of here. I'll find somebody else. I don't need you. God was faithful to David and continued working and got David from 1 Samuel 21, living in fear and lying and doing all of these. He got him back to the right place of being obedient. And when David was back in that place, he goes, oh man, I learned my lesson. I was afraid. God saved me. I shouldn't have been doing all of that. I'm so thankful for God's work. That's essentially what happened. And then David pens Psalm 34. Beautiful psalm. Beautiful psalm. And so if you have time today, read it. You're not doing anything this afternoon. Go get your food, go home, take a couple minutes and read through Psalm 34. It's excellent. Lying is never going to be okay. Trusting God is never going to be wrong. It's going to be difficult at times. Sometimes it's going to seem easier to just go ahead and lie. But it's never going to be right. It's never going to be approved by God. It's always going to be a lie. A lie is a lie. So God help us that we would commit ourselves to telling the truth, to trusting God. and just saying, you know what, I don't know what's going to happen to me, but I'm just going to tell the truth, and I'll just let God take care of it. I'm throwing myself at the mercy of God. It's His. Before we pray, let me just remind you about a couple